The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any building on Earth. It floated in orbit around a quiet blue star, far from any planet. The hall was filled with tall seats arranged in wide circles. Each seat held the representative of a different civilization from across the galaxy. Some species were tall and thin. Others were small and covered in shining shells. A few looked almost like walking plants. The air was calm, but the mood in the chamber was not. At the center of the hall stood a single platform. On that platform stood a human. His name was David Hale, the ambassador of Earth. This meeting had been called because humanity had asked for it. For many years, Earth had sent reports to the Galactic Council. The reports all spoke about the same thing: a threat in deep space, a danger that was slowly moving toward the known systems of the galaxy. But the Council had ignored those warnings again and again. Many of the older civilizations believed humanity was simply afraid of the unknown. Humans were still considered a young species among the stars. They had joined the Council only a few decades ago. Now, after years of warnings, Earth had asked for one final meeting. The Council leader, an old representative named Aaron, leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador Hale," he said slowly, "you asked for this gathering. Speak." David stood calmly. He looked around the chamber at the hundreds of watching faces. Some looked bored. Some looked annoyed. Very few looked concerned. David took a quiet breath before he began. "For 42 years," he said, "Earth has monitored unusual signals coming from beyond the outer rim of the galaxy." A large screen appeared above the center of the hall. Lines of red dots spread across a star map. "Star systems have been going silent," David continued. "Not one or two. Hundreds." Soft whispers spread across the chamber. Many council members had seen these reports before, but they had always believed they were mistakes or natural disasters. David continued speaking. "Our probes show clear evidence that something is moving through those regions. Entire systems are losing power and communication at the same time." Aaron waved one long hand. Yes, he said. "We have heard these reports before. Your scientists believe an unknown force is destroying these systems." David nodded. "That is correct." A tall insect-like representative made a sharp clicking sound. "And you believe this force is coming toward our space?" "Yes," David said calmly. Several council members made quiet sounds of disbelief. One small representative spoke up. "Ambassador Hale, the distance between those systems and the council territories is enormous. Even if something existed out there, it would take centuries to reach us." David looked directly at the speaker. "That would be true," he said, "if it moved slowly." The screen changed. New images appeared. Strange dark shapes surrounded distant stars. "These recordings were taken by our long-range probes," David said. The chamber grew quieter. Even the council leader leaned closer. The images showed something impossible. Massive shapes moving between stars. Too large to be normal ships. Too organized to be natural objects. "They are fleets," David said. Silence filled the chamber. After a moment, one representative laughed. A low, rough sound. "Human imagination is impressive," the alien said. "But imagination is not proof." A few others made sounds of agreement. David did not react. Instead, he continued. "Earth has spent decades preparing for this threat. We built observation stations in deep space. We created defensive technology in case our warnings were correct." Aaron frowned slightly. "And what exactly are you asking from the council?" David folded his hands behind his back. "Cooperation," he said simply. "We ask that the council begin preparing defensive fleets, fortify outer colonies, expand long-range detection systems." The insect-like representative clicked again. "You are asking the entire galaxy to prepare for war based on human theories." "Yes," David said. The chamber became loud with discussion. Some members argued. Others shook their heads. Finally, Aaron raised his hand for silence. When the room quieted again, he spoke firmly. "The Council appreciates humanity's concern," he said, "but there is no clear evidence that such a threat exists." David said nothing. The galaxy cannot begin military preparations every time a young civilization fears shadows in deep space, Aaron continued. Many representatives nodded. The council will not take action at this time. The decision had been made. The meeting was over. David stood quietly for a moment. Then he spoke again. This was Earth's final warning. Some council members turned back toward him. Aaron looked slightly irritated.
What do you mean by that?
David's voice remained calm. For 42 years, humanity tried diplomacy. We shared every piece of data we had. We asked for cooperation. He looked around the chamber one last time. But if the galaxy chooses to ignore the danger, he paused. Then humanity will act alone. The words hung in the air. Aaron narrowed his eyes. Is that a threat, Ambassador? David shook his head.
No.
He turned toward the exit platform. It is a statement. Before leaving the chamber, he said one final sentence. Earth has done its duty. The doors closed behind him. Inside the council chamber, many representatives returned to their conversations. Most believed the meeting had been a waste of time. But far away, across the cold darkness of space, hidden shipyards around Earth had already begun to wake. Massive structures powered on. Silent fleets waited in the shadows. Humanity had given the galaxy one last warning.
Now,
the waiting was over. Far from the busy routes of the galaxy, hidden deep inside the solar system, something enormous was waking up. For many years, humanity had worked in silence. No announcements, no celebration, no attention from the Galactic Council. While other civilizations believed humans were still learning how to live among the stars, Earth had been building something very different. Massive shipyards floated in the darkness beyond the orbit of Pluto. They were so large that they looked like small cities made of metal and light. Thousands of workers, engineers, and machines moved across the giant structures every day. Most of the galaxy did not even know these shipyards existed. Inside one of the largest stations, Admiral Marcus Reed stood on a wide observation deck. From the window in front of him, he could see an entire fleet resting in the blackness of space. Rows of enormous warships stretched farther than the eye could see. Some were shaped like long blades. Others were wide and heavy, built to carry massive weapons. Smaller support ships moved slowly between them like insects around giants. Marcus folded his arms and watched quietly. A young officer stood beside him, holding a tablet filled with reports. Fleet activation is moving faster than expected, sir, the officer said. Marcus nodded slightly. That's good, he replied. For 50 years, Marcus had served in Earth's Defense Command. He had watched humanity grow from a young spacefaring race into something much stronger. But few people outside Earth understood how far humans had come. The officer looked back at the fleets outside the window. It's hard to believe the Council still thinks we are weak, he said. Marcus gave a small smile. Let them think that. The officer hesitated before asking another question. Do you really think the threat Ambassador Hale warned them about is real? Marcus did not answer right away. Instead, he pressed a button on the control panel near the window. The glass darkened slightly as new images appeared across its surface. A star map filled the display. Hundreds of red marks spread across the outer edge of the galaxy. Each mark represented a silent system. Stars that once held colonies, stations, or entire civilizations. Now they were dark. We have probes out there, Marcus said quietly. Some of them are still sending data. The officer studied the map carefully. So it's true. Marcus nodded. Yes. He zoomed the map farther outward. At the very edge of the screen, several large shapes appeared. They were not planets. They were not natural objects. They were moving. And they were heading toward the center of the galaxy. Marcus turned off the display. That's why we build all this, he said. The officer looked again at the fleet outside. How many ships do we have ready now? Marcus checked the data on the panel. 3,000 combat vessels. The officer's eyes widened slightly. And more are being completed every month. The officer slowly shook his head. The Council has no idea. No, Marcus said. They don't. Across the shipyard, Huge mechanical arms moved into position around one of the largest warships. Its surface was covered in heavy armor plates. Long weapon structures stretched along its sides. Bright power lines glowed across its hull. Workers called it a Titan-class battleship. Only a few of them existed, but each one carried weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. A voice came through Marcus's communication device. "Admiral Reed, command channel from Earth." Marcus tapped the device. "Put it through." A calm voice answered. It was General Arthur Kane, the leader of Earth's Defense Command. "Marcus," the general said, "I assume you saw the council meeting." "I did," Marcus replied. And Marcus looked out at the silent fleet. They ignored the warning. The general sighed quietly. "I expected that." For a moment, neither man spoke. Then the general continued. "Ambassador Hale has returned to Earth. He confirmed that diplomacy is finished." Marcus nodded slowly. "Understood. Which means," the general said, "we move to Phase 2. Marcus straightened slightly. "Yes, sir. All fleets will begin full readiness," the general ordered. "I want patrol groups moving toward the Outer Rim within 2 weeks." Marcus checked the shipyard reports again. "We can do that." "Good," the general said. His voice became more serious. "Marcus, if our calculations are correct, the first contact with the threat could happen within 5 years. The officer beside Marcus looked shocked when he heard that, but Marcus remained calm. "We'll be ready." "I know," the general said. The connection ended. Marcus turned toward the officer. "Send orders to all fleet commanders," he said. "Yes, sir." "Begin final activation." The officer hurried away to carry out the command. Across the massive shipyard, lights began to turn on across hundreds of ships. Engines warmed. Power systems came online. Weapon platforms slowly moved into position. After decades of silence, Earth's hidden fleets were finally waking up. Marcus Reed continued watching through the observation window. Far beyond the solar system, something dangerous was moving through the darkness between stars. But humanity had not spent 50 years preparing for nothing. They had hoped the galaxy would listen. They had hoped diplomacy would work. But now the choice had been made. Humanity would face the coming storm alone. And this time, they would not be holding back. 3 weeks after the council meeting, the first real panic began. At first, it was only small reports. A distant mining station stopped sending signals. A trading outpost suddenly went silent. Long-range communication towers in the Outer Rim began losing contact with nearby systems. For a while, many governments believed it was just technical failure. But the pattern quickly became impossible to ignore. Entire star systems were disappearing. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency alerts started appearing on every major screen. Representatives gathered again inside the massive chamber, but this time the atmosphere was very different from the last meeting with the human ambassador. The room was louder. Nervous voices filled the air. The large central screen showed a growing red line across the galaxy map. Each red mark represented a system that had gone silent. Council leader Aaron stared at the display with a deep frown. "This cannot be correct," he said quietly. One of the council analysts stepped forward. "We have confirmed the reports 3 times. The signals stopped within minutes of each other." "How many systems?" Aaron asked. The analyst hesitated. 47 in the last 5 days. Murmurs spread through the chamber. That number was too large to ignore. Some representatives began arguing loudly. This could still be a natural event. No natural event spreads across space like that. Another representative pointed toward the map. "This is exactly what the humans warned us about." The room suddenly grew quieter. For a moment, no one spoke. Everyone remembered the last council meeting. The human ambassador standing calmly on the platform. The warnings. The strange images of massive objects moving between stars. Aaron slowly turned toward the analysts. "Do we have any visual confirmation?" The analyst nodded. "Yes." One of the deep space observation stations managed to record something before contact was lost. The main screen changed. The chamber lights dimmed slightly. A recording began playing. At first, the screen showed a normal view of space. A distant star glowed softly in the darkness. Then something moved. A shadow crossed the star. Then another. And another. The shapes were enormous. They moved slowly, but with clear purpose. Some were larger than entire cities. Others stretched for kilometers like long metal creatures traveling through space. Hundreds of them surrounded the distant star. Suddenly, the image shook. Bright flashes appeared across the screen. Energy beams struck the planet orbiting the star. Within seconds, the planet's surface cracked. Huge pieces of rock broke apart and drifted into space. Gas clouds exploded outward. The entire world was destroyed. A few council members gasped in shock. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Aaron leaned back slowly in his seat. That was a colony world, one representative whispered. Another voice spoke quietly. How long before they reach council territory? The analyst checked the data again. If their speed remains the same, possibly 20 years. The chamber exploded with noise. 20 years is nothing. Our outer colonies will be the first targets. We must prepare our fleets. But one older representative raised a serious question. How many of those ships were in the recording? The analyst answered immediately. Over 300. That number made the room fall silent again. Most council fleets only had a few hundred ships in total. 300 enemy vessels destroying one system meant disaster. And that was only one fleet. Another analyst spoke up. Our probes show similar fleets in several nearby regions. The screen changed again. This time the galaxy map showed multiple moving clusters. Each cluster marked a group of unknown ships. There were many of them. Too many. Aaron slowly rubbed his forehead. They're spreading across the rim, he said. Yes, the analyst confirmed. One representative finally spoke the thought that everyone was trying to avoid. We should contact Earth. Several heads turned. The humans predicted this, the representative continued. Their fleets might already be prepared. Another member nodded. They've been studying this threat for decades. Aaron remained silent for a long moment. Then he finally spoke. Send a message to Earth. What should we say? An assistant asked. Aaron looked again at the map of disappearing systems. His voice was quieter now. Request assistance. The assistant hesitated slightly. Should we also acknowledge that their warning was correct? Aaron closed his eyes briefly. Yes, he said. Across the chamber, communication officers began sending the urgent transmission. The message traveled quickly across space toward the solar system. But far away from the council station, Earth was already watching the same map. Deep inside a human command center, large screens displayed the moving enemy fleets. Military officers studied every movement carefully. At the center of the room stood Admiral Marcus Reed. He folded his arms as the latest report appeared. Another 12 systems lost, an officer said. Marcus nodded slowly. They're accelerating. Yes, sir. Another officer turned from his console. Admiral, we are receiving a message from the Galactic Council. Marcus already knew what it would say. They want help, the officer continued. Marcus looked at the approaching clusters on the screen. Then he spoke calmly. Forward the message to Earth Command. Yes, sir. The officer paused before asking one more question. Should we respond? Marcus watched the enemy fleets moving through the outer rim. For years, humanity had tried to warn the galaxy. But no one had listened. Now the threat was real. Now the danger was clear. Marcus finally answered. Not yet. Far beyond human space, another distant star suddenly went dark. The invasion had truly begun, and the galaxy was running out of time. The message from the Galactic Council reached Earth within a few hours. It was marked as urgent priority. Inside the council station, the representatives waited anxiously for a reply. The large chamber that had once been calm and confident now felt tense and restless. Every screen still showed the same frightening map. More red marks had appeared. Another system had gone silent only minutes ago. Council leader Aaron sat quietly in his tall seat, watching the map grow worse. No one in the room was laughing anymore. One of the communication officers finally spoke. We have confirmation that the message reached Earth. Aaron looked up quickly. And their response? The officer hesitated. There is no response yet. Murmurs spread across the chamber. They must have received it. Why are they not answering? A representative from a distant trade alliance spoke loudly. Perhaps they are doing exactly what we did to them. The words made the room fall silent. Everyone remembered the last council meeting. Human Ambassador David Hale had stood in the center of the chamber and calmly warned them. 42 years of warnings. 42 years of ignored reports. Now the galaxy was finally seeing the truth. Aaron slowly leaned forward. Send another message, he ordered. What should it say? The officer asked. Aaron took a deep breath. Tell them the council requests immediate cooperation in defending the outer systems. The officer nodded and began sending the message. But before the transmission was even finished, a loud alert sounded across the chamber. The main screen flashed bright red. New report from the Outer Rim, an analyst shouted. The room went silent again. The galaxy map zoomed into a region near several important trade routes. 5 systems had suddenly turned dark. All 5? Aaron asked. Yes, the analyst replied. All communication lost within 3 minutes. Another recording began playing. This one came from a long-range observation probe. The image showed dozens of enormous ships moving slowly around a bright yellow star. Large beams of energy fired toward the planets orbiting the star. Within seconds, entire continents burned. Cities vanished under massive explosions. Then the planet itself broke apart. Fragments of rock drifted away like dust. The recording ended. One of the representatives whispered in horror. They are not conquering worlds. Another voice answered quietly. They are destroying them. Fear spread through the chamber. A young council assistant suddenly looked up from her station. We are receiving a transmission. Aaron straightened. From Earth. Yes. Every eye in the room turned toward the central screen. The message appeared as simple text. There was no video. No long explanation. Only one short statement. Humanity warned the galaxy for decades. Diplomacy has failed. Earth will now act according to its own defense protocols. The chamber exploded with confused voices. What does that mean? Are they refusing to help? Aaron raised his hand for silence. Send another message, he said quickly. What should we request this time? The officer asked. Aaron spoke carefully. Ask what assistance they are willing to provide. The message was sent. This time, the reply came almost immediately. A video transmission appeared on the screen. The chamber grew quiet as the image formed. Ambassador David Hale stood in front of a plain background. His expression was calm, just like during the last meeting. Members of the Galactic Council, he said. His voice echoed softly through the hall. For more than 40 years, humanity shared every piece of information we had about the approaching threat. No one interrupted him. We asked for cooperation. We asked for preparation. David paused for a moment. But those warnings were dismissed. Aaron leaned forward slightly. Ambassador Hale, he said carefully, the Council acknowledges that your predictions were correct. David nodded once. I know. Another representative spoke quickly. The galaxy needs humanity's help. David looked directly at the camera. Humanity never refused to help, he said. But we will not repeat the same mistake. What mistake? Someone asked. David answered calmly. Waiting. The room fell silent again. Earth began preparing for this threat decades ago, David continued. Our fleets are already moving toward the Outer Rim. Several council members looked surprised. You already deployed fleets? One asked. Yes, David said. Without informing the council? Another demanded. David's expression did not change. We informed the council for 42 years. No one had an answer to that. Aaron finally spoke again. What exactly does humanity plan to do? David gave a simple reply. Stop the invasion. And the council? Aaron asked. David paused before answering. You are free to assist if you are prepared. The screen behind David briefly changed. For a single moment, the council chamber saw something shocking. Rows of enormous human warships floating in deep space. Thousands of them. The image disappeared quickly. David looked back at the camera. Humanity gave the galaxy one last warning. His voice became slightly more serious. Now we will deal with the consequences. The transmission ended. The chamber remained silent for a long time. Everyone understood one thing now. Humanity had not been asking for help. They had been offering it. And now the galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. The true power of Earth's fleets. Somewhere far beyond the solar system, thousands of human warships were already moving into the darkness. And they were heading straight toward the approaching enemy. Across the galaxy, news about Earth's response spread quickly. Every major government had seen the same transmission from Ambassador David Hale. Every council member had seen the brief image of the human fleets. Thousands of warships. For many civilizations, the image was shocking.
For others, it was terrifying.
Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council a few decades earlier. Most species believe humans were still learning how to live among advanced civilizations. But the fleets shown in that short moment told a very different story. Deep in space, far from the solar system, those fleets were already moving. Large formations of human ships traveled silently between the stars. Their engines glowed with a soft blue light as they crossed the dark emptiness. At the center of the largest fleet was a massive command ship called Resolute. Inside the ship's command bridge, Admiral Marcus Reed stood in front of a wide display screen. Dozens of officers worked quietly around him. The screen showed a large map of nearby systems. Small blue lights marked human ships. There were many of them. "Status report," Marcus said calmly. An officer looked up from her console. "Fleet Groups 1 through 6 have entered Outer Rim space," she said. "No enemy contact yet." Marcus nodded. "Keep long-range scanners active." "Yes, sir." Another officer turned his chair. "Admiral, we are receiving observation signals from several alien stations." Marcus was not surprised. Of course they were watching. Every civilization in the galaxy wanted to see what humanity would do. "Let them watch," Marcus said. The officer smiled slightly. "Yes, sir." Outside the ship, the fleet moved through space like a silent storm. Thousands of vessels traveled in perfect formation. Some ships were fast attack cruisers built for speed and precision. Others were heavy battleships carrying enormous weapons. Between them moved support ships, supply carriers, and long-range sensor craft. It was one of the largest fleets ever assembled in galactic history. But this was only one of several human fleets. Back on the Galactic Council station, representatives watched the movement of these fleets through shared tracking data. The council chamber was much quieter now. No one doubted humanity anymore. One representative stared at the screen in disbelief. "How long have they been building this?" Another replied softly. "Decades, it seems." Council leader Aaron studied the human formations carefully. "They prepared long before the threat arrived," he said. A military advisor spoke from the side of the chamber. "Our combined council fleets are smaller than this single human force." That fact made several representatives uncomfortable. For years they had believed humanity was weak. Now, they were seeing something very different. Back aboard the Resolute, Marcus Reed received a new message. "Admiral, long-range probe has detected movement," an officer said. Marcus stepped closer to the screen. "Show me." The map zoomed outward toward a distant system. Several large shapes appeared on the display. Enemy ships.
Dozens of them.
"They're moving toward the system's central star," the officer reported. Marcus studied the data quietly. "How many colonies in that system?" 3 small mining worlds," another officer answered. Marcus folded his arms. "They won't survive if the enemy arrives first." The bridge grew silent. Everyone knew what those enemy fleets could do. Entire planets destroyed in minutes. Marcus looked at the navigation officer. "Change course." "Yes, sir." "Intercept the enemy fleet." The officer quickly began entering new commands. Outside the command ship, the massive fleet slowly adjusted direction. Thousands of human vessels turned together like one enormous machine. Their engines brightened as they accelerated. The distance between the fleets began to shrink. Far away, near the targeted star system, the enemy ships continued their slow advance. They moved without hesitation. They had already destroyed many systems. To them, this would be just another world to erase. But this time, something new was coming to meet them. Back in the council chamber, the shared tracking map updated again. Blue lights and red lights moved closer together. One representative leaned forward. "They're going to engage the enemy already?" Aaron nodded slowly. "It appears so." Another voice spoke quietly. "This will be the first real battle." Across the galaxy, millions of people began watching the same map. Alien governments, military commanders,
Scientists.
even civilians. Everyone wanted to know one thing. Could humanity actually stop the invading force? Inside the Resolute, Marcus Reed remained calm as the distance continued shrinking. "Time to intercept," he asked. 30 minutes, the navigation officer replied. Marcus looked around the bridge. "Prepare all weapons." Officers immediately began working faster. Power levels increased. Weapon systems came online across the fleet. Massive cannons adjusted their positions. Missile bays opened. Shield generators strengthened. For decades, these ships had waited, built quietly, prepared carefully. Now the moment had finally arrived. Marcus looked once more at the approaching enemy markers. He spoke in a steady voice. "Humanity, try diplomacy." The officers around him listened closely. "But now," Marcus continued, "we show the galaxy why Earth prepared for war." Outside the command ship, thousands of human warships moved toward their first real test. The enemy fleet was only minutes away, and the galaxy was about to witness the true strength of humanity. The distance between the two fleets was closing quickly. In deep space near the outer rim, a lonely yellow star burned quietly. 3 small mining worlds moved slowly around it. The colonies on those planets had already sent emergency signals when their sensors detected the approaching enemy ships. But they knew help would not arrive in time. For days they had watched the dark shapes moving through space. Huge ships, strange and silent. Now the enemy fleet was only hours away. But something else had appeared on the system scanners. Thousands of human ships. Inside the human command ship Resolute, Admiral Marcus Reed stood calmly on the bridge. The large screen in front of him showed both fleets moving closer. Blue lights marked the human ships. Red lights marked the enemy. The gap between them was shrinking fast. "Range update," Marcus said. A sensor officer checked his screen. "Enemy fleet at 8 million kilometers and closing." Marcus nodded. "Visual confirmation? Sending it now." The screen changed. The officers on the bridge saw the enemy ships clearly for the first time. The room became very quiet. The ships did not look like normal vessels. Their shapes were strange and uneven, almost like giant pieces of dark metal grown together. Some ships had long, sharp structures that stretched outward like claws. Others looked like enormous floating fortresses. Dim red lights moved slowly across their surfaces. They were massive. Some of them were larger than the biggest human battleships. One officer spoke quietly. "They don't look like anything we've seen before." Marcus studied the image carefully. "No," he agreed. "They don't." Another officer looked at the energy readings. "Admiral, they are charging weapons." Marcus remained calm. "Prepare the fleet." Across thousands of human ships, alarms began to sound. Weapon systems powered up. Missile launchers opened. Energy cannons warmed to full strength. Human ships moved into combat formations. Some cruisers spread outward to surround the enemy. Heavy battleships stayed near the center, ready to fire their largest weapons. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships and formed defensive patrols. Back on the Galactic Council station, the chamber was completely silent. The entire council watched the same live battle feed. Many had never seen a conflict this large before. Blue human ships and red enemy ships moved closer on the display. One representative whispered nervously, "This is it." Aaron leaned forward in his seat. "Begin recording everything." The analyst nodded quickly. "Yes, Council Leader." Back on the Resolute, the distance had dropped to 3 million kilometers. The enemy fleet began moving faster. They are accelerating, the navigation officer said. Marcus nodded slightly. They want the first strike. He turned toward the weapons officer. Let's disappoint them. The officer smiled. Yes, sir. Open fire. A moment later, the first human battleships fired. Brilliant lines of white energy shot across space like lightning. Dozens of beams struck the front line of enemy ships. Massive explosions erupted across their dark hulls. Several enemy vessels broke apart immediately. Fragments of metal scattered into the void. Inside the council chamber, gasps echoed through the room. That destroyed them instantly. The battle had begun. The enemy fleet quickly responded. Large red beams fired from their ships toward the human formation. Some beams struck human cruisers. Bright shields flashed as the attacks hit. One cruiser's shield collapsed, and the ship exploded in a sudden burst of fire. Marcus watched the reports carefully. Damage report? One cruiser lost, the officer answered. Minor damage to two others. Marcus nodded. Continue attack pattern. Human ships fired again. This time hundreds of missiles launched from different directions. The missiles moved fast, leaving bright trails behind them. They struck the enemy fleet from multiple angles. Huge explosions filled the darkness. More enemy ships were destroyed. Others drifted out of formation with heavy damage. The enemy tried to reorganize. But the human fleet moved faster. Attack cruisers rushed forward, firing rapid energy blasts. Heavy battleships targeted the largest enemy vessels. One massive human cannon fired a beam so bright it lit the entire battlefield. The beam struck a giant enemy ship directly in the center. The ship split apart like broken glass. Inside the council chamber, the watching representatives could hardly believe what they were seeing. The enemy fleet that had destroyed entire star systems was losing ships quickly. One military advisor whispered in shock. The humans are winning. Back on the Resolute, Marcus watched calmly. Enemy formation breaking apart, the sensor officer reported. Marcus nodded. Push forward. The fleet advanced together. Human ships surrounded the remaining enemy vessels. More explosions lit the darkness. Within minutes, the last enemy ship was destroyed. The battlefield became quiet again. Only drifting debris remained where the enemy fleet had once been. On the bridge, several officers exchanged surprised looks. The battle had ended faster than anyone expected. Marcus checked the final report. Enemy fleet eliminated, the officer confirmed. Marcus folded his arms. That was only the scout group. The officers looked at him. Marcus spoke quietly. The real invasion force is still coming. Far away, deeper in the darkness beyond the outer rim, thousands more enemy ships continued their slow advance toward the galaxy. And the war had only just begun. Rocket. The battle ended, but its impact spread across the entire galaxy. Within hours, the recording of the fight near the mining system had been shared everywhere. Every government, every research station, and every major news network received the same footage. For the first time, the galaxy had seen the enemy fleet destroyed. And it was humanity that had done it. On the Galactic Council Station, the large chamber was filled again with representatives. But this time the atmosphere was very different. The recording of the battle played again on the massive screen. Human ships firing powerful energy beams. Missiles striking enemy vessels from all directions. Giant enemy ships exploding one after another. The representatives watched quietly. Some looked shocked. Others looked deeply worried. Council leader Aaron sat silently as the recording ended once more. For many years, the council had believed humanity was simply another young civilization trying to prove itself. Now that belief had disappeared. One representative finally spoke. The enemy fleet destroyed over 50 systems before this battle. Another voice added quietly, and the humans defeated them in less than 10 minutes. A military advisor stepped forward with new data. Our analysts have reviewed the battle carefully, he said. Aaron looked at him. What did you discover? The advisor pointed to the screen. Human ships are using technology that is far more advanced than anything currently used by council fleets. Several representatives exchanged nervous looks. How advanced? One asked. The advisor answered honestly. Possibly decades ahead of us. The chamber became quiet again. For a long time, the galaxy had believed it was guiding humanity. Now it appeared the opposite might be true. Meanwhile, far away from the Council station, human fleets continued their mission. Near the Outer Rim, the massive command ship Resolute floated among hundreds of other vessels. The battlefield where the enemy scout fleet had been destroyed was now filled only with drifting metal fragments. Inside the ship's command bridge, Admiral Marcus Reed studied the latest reports. An officer approached him. Admiral, long-range scans show no additional enemy ships in this sector. Marcus nodded. That confirms our theory. Another officer looked up. They really did send a scout fleet first. Marcus turned toward the main screen. Yes. The screen displayed a much larger map of the outer regions of the galaxy. Several red clusters were moving slowly toward the center. Each cluster represented a massive enemy fleet, much larger than the one humanity had just destroyed. The officer beside Marcus looked at the map with concern. How many ships do you estimate in the main invasion? Marcus answered calmly. Millions. The bridge became very quiet. Even the experienced officers felt uneasy hearing that number. Another officer spoke carefully. The scout fleet we destroyed had about 300 ships. Marcus nodded. And that was only the beginning. Back on the Council station, a similar map was now being displayed in the chamber. The analysts had finished updating the latest information from deep space probes. The red clusters were spreading across the outer rim like a growing storm. One representative spoke nervously. If those fleets move toward populated regions, the analyst finished the sentence. Entire civilizations could disappear. Aaron leaned forward slowly. Contact Earth again, he said. The communication officer nodded. Preparing transmission. The message was simple this time. The Council requests a full strategic briefing from Earth. Within minutes, a response arrived. But instead of a message, a live video appeared on the main screen. Ambassador David Hale stood calmly once again. Behind him was a large window showing Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. The Council chamber became silent. Aaron spoke first. Ambassador Hale, the Council has seen the battle. David nodded.
Yes.
We expected you would. The enemy fleet was destroyed quickly, Aaron continued. That was only a scout force, David replied. Several representatives shifted uneasily. That is exactly why we requested this meeting, Aaron said. David looked at the Council members carefully. For 42 years, humanity prepared for this moment. He gestured toward another screen behind him. It showed dozens of human fleets moving through space. We built ships, developed weapons, and created defense systems. One representative asked the question everyone was thinking. Why did you not tell the Council? David answered simply. We did. No one spoke. The truth was clear. Humanity had warned them many times. They had simply refused to listen. Aaron finally asked the most important question. What happens now? David's voice remained calm. Now the real war begins. The screen behind him zoomed out to show the full enemy invasion. Hundreds of massive fleets were approaching the galaxy from different directions. The scout fleet had been nothing compared to what was coming. David looked back at the Council. Humanity will intercept as many fleets as possible before they reach inhabited systems. And the Council? Aaron asked. David paused briefly. That depends on how prepared you are. The chamber remained silent. Many civilizations had strong fleets, but none of them were ready for an enemy this powerful. The transmission ended shortly after. Inside the Council chamber, the representatives understood something important. Humanity was no longer just another member of the Council. They had become the galaxy's first line of defense. And far beyond the Outer Rim, the true invasion was still moving closer. The first battle had been won, but the war for the galaxy had only just begun. Rocket. The galaxy had barely recovered from the shocking footage of the destroyed scout fleet when the main invasion arrived. Across the Outer Rim, Distant stars flickered as enormous red clusters of enemy ships appeared on long-range sensors. Millions of vessels moved slowly, but with terrifying precision, each one larger and more destructive than the last. Entire star systems fell silent as the enemy approached, and the civilizations that had dismissed humanity's warnings now trembled in fear. Inside the command bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Reed stood before the fleet's holographic display. Blue lights marked human ships, spread carefully across space. Red lights marked enemy vessels, closing in from all directions. The distance between the fleets was vast, but Marcus knew it would close fast. A young officer turned from her console. "Admiral, our long-range scans show multiple enemy clusters merging. They're forming an attack front that could cover 5 entire systems at once." Marcus nodded slowly. "So it begins." The fleet moved in perfect formation, thousands of ships responding like a single organism. Human vessels were not only fast and heavily armed, they were coordinated with precision no other race in the galaxy could match. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers, weaving between heavy cruisers. Energy cannons and missile arrays came online, their hums and pulses filling the ship. "Admiral, sensors indicate that entire colonies along the outer rim are already under attack," reported another officer. "Do we engage immediately?" Marcus's eyes narrowed as he studied the enemy formation.
Not yet.
"We will not waste lives on small targets while the main force is still ahead. Focus on interception points. We must strike at the heart of their fleet, not the outskirts." Across the galaxy, news of humanity's first true confrontation with the main armada spread like wildfire. Alien governments watched in awe as human fleets moved toward the approaching enemy, ready to meet them in combat. Even the Galactic Council, which had once dismissed Earth as weak, was now recording every moment. "Estimated engagement time?" Marcus asked, his gaze on the advancing clusters. 2 days, Admiral," a navigation officer replied. Marcus nodded. "Good. Prepare all systems. Full shields, weapon calibration at maximum. Launch all long-range drones and reconnaissance units. Every ship must be ready for the first strike." Inside the council chamber, representatives whispered nervously. The enemy was not just a threat, they were a force that could destroy everything if humanity failed. For decades, the galaxy had assumed humans were inexperienced, reckless, and limited in power. That assumption was about to be tested. Back aboard the Resolute, the bridge crew prepared for the largest battle they had ever faced. Thousands of human vessels had left Earth in perfect secrecy, their engines burning with enough energy to cross the outer rim in days. For decades, humans had anticipated this moment. Every weapon, every formation, every strategy had been practiced, refined, and perfected. Marcus walked to the center of the bridge. "Remember this," he said to his officers. "The enemy is strong. They have destroyed entire worlds. But we are stronger. Humanity has waited for this moment. And now we fight not for conquest, not for pride, but to save every civilization in this galaxy. Failure is not an option." The officers nodded, their faces firm, their resolve clear. Outside, the human fleet moved steadily toward the enemy. The first distant flashes of red energy reached across the void as the invaders began firing on outer colonies. Human ships adjusted speed, closing the gap while avoiding the blasts. Each attack was calculated, precise, and deadly. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet formation is stable, but they are advancing on multiple fronts. Their focus seems to be on dividing us." Marcus's voice was calm but commanding. "Let them. A divided enemy is easier to destroy. Stick to our formation. Protect the fleet, protect each other, and do not let them reach any inhabited system. Today, humanity shows the galaxy its true strength." For hours, the fleets approached each other in silence, the darkness of space between them filled only with tension. Every human ship was ready, every weapon online, every pilot prepared for the first strike. The enemy had expected fear, confusion, or hesitation. They would find none. As the distance closed further, bright flashes began to appear in the void ahead, small skirmishes as scouting ships collided. Marcus observed calmly. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The enemy thinks they know war. We will teach them what humanity is capable of." Across the galaxy, civilians, scientists, and leaders watched in anxious hope. For the first time, many believed that the enemy could be stopped. Humanity was no longer young, no longer weak. It was ready. And now, the true war for the galaxy had begun. The enemy fleet had grown larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Millions of ships moved through the darkness of space, forming massive red clusters that stretched across entire star systems. Their engines glowed like hot coals, and their weapon systems fired in warning bursts toward distant colonies. Civilization after civilization watched helplessly as the advancing armada erased worlds from the galaxy. But humanity was ready. The Resolute led the human fleet through the void, followed by thousands of warships. Blue lights glimmered across the formation like stars in a controlled storm. Energy hums filled every command bridge. Engines roared to full power, and weapon systems waited for the order to fire. For decades, humanity had prepared for this moment. Now the time had come to show the galaxy what that preparation meant. Admiral Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the enemy approach. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of sensors and the low hum of power systems. Every officer knew their role. Every crew member had trained for years, and now all that training would be tested. "Range to the enemy fleet?" Marcus asked. 5 million kilometers, closing fast, reported the sensor officer. "Weapon system status," he continued. "All systems online, Admiral," replied the weapons officer. "Shields at full capacity. Stellar cannons charged. Long-range missiles ready." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then let us begin. Humanity does not wait. Humanity strikes." The order was simple but powerful. Across the fleet, lights flashed as weapons came online. Engines burned brighter, and the ships accelerated toward the enemy. For the first time in history, human warships would meet an enemy of such magnitude head-on. The first salvo came from the heavy battleships. Brilliant white beams of energy shot across space, striking enemy vessels before they could react. Explosions lit the darkness, casting shadows across the fleet. Enemy ships tried to respond, firing back with red beams of energy, but the human shields held firm. "Impact report," Marcus asked. "Multiple enemy ships destroyed immediately," the weapons officer said. "Shields absorbed most of the counterattacks. Damage is minimal to our fleet." A quiet smile crossed Marcus's face. "Good. Keep pressure on them." Missiles launched from human carriers streaked toward the enemy, exploding on impact with devastating precision. Smaller human cruisers moved swiftly around the battlefield, striking weak points in the enemy formation. Fighters swarmed in tight formations, intercepting enemy drones and assault craft before they could reach human ships. "Admiral," said the tactical officer, "the enemy is trying to regroup. They're splitting their fleet into smaller attack groups." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Let them divide. A scattered enemy is easier to destroy." The human fleet moved as one. Battleships fired in synchronized patterns, missile volleys rained from all directions, and fighters danced across the void like streaks of lightning. The enemy vessels, massive and terrifying as they were, began to falter under the precision and coordination of the humans. On the command deck, Marcus watched a massive enemy cruiser explode, splitting into pieces like shattered glass. "Direct hit," he said quietly. "Good work." The fleet pressed forward. Human ships did not hesitate, did not falter. Every vessel followed its orders perfectly, every weapon discharged with deadly accuracy. The enemy's formation began to collapse. Large ships were destroyed first, smaller ships next, until the once massive fleet was reduced to scattered fragments drifting in the void. Across the galaxy, governments and civilians watched the live battle feed in disbelief. For decades, humans had been underestimated. Now, they were the most powerful force in the galaxy. Entire systems were being protected by a fleet that moved with precision and strength no one had imagined. Back on the Resolute, Marcus turned toward the bridge crew. This is only the beginning. The scout fleet was just a warning. The main armada is still coming. Humanity will not stop here. We fight to protect every system, every life, every civilization. Humanity unleashes its power now, and the galaxy will survive because of it. Outside the fleet, the human ships advanced together as a single unstoppable force. Beams of energy carved paths through enemy ranks. Explosions filled space, lighting up the darkness like distant suns. Missiles struck with devastating precision. Enemy formations disintegrated faster than anyone could have predicted. The first major engagement of the war had ended. Humanity had won decisively. But Marcus knew the victory was only the start. The true enemy still remained, massive fleets approaching from deeper in the outer rim, ready to destroy everything in their path. Marcus looked out through the observation window at the stars beyond. He took a deep breath. Humanity had unleashed its power, and the galaxy had witnessed it. The enemy had underestimated them. That mistake would cost billions. And humanity was just getting started. The enemy's main fleet was approaching the inner systems. Millions of ships spread across the outer rim, moving closer to the heart of the galaxy. Every civilization watched in terror. Entire worlds could be destroyed before any defenses could stop them. But humanity was ready. Inside the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Reed stood on the bridge, calm and focused. Outside the observation windows, the stars stretched into streaks as human ships accelerated toward the approaching enemy. This was the moment humanity had trained for decades to face. Admiral, outer sensors report multiple enemy formations heading straight for the solar system, a young officer said. Marcus nodded slowly. Plot intercept courses. All fleets must converge before they reach inhabited worlds. The crew moved quickly, executing orders with precision. Every cruiser, carrier, and fighter launched into formation. Engines roared, shields hummed, and weapon systems came online across the fleet. Admiral, the tactical officer said, the enemy is dividing into 3 large wings. They plan to attack simultaneously from different directions. Marcus studied the approaching clusters on the holographic display. Let them. Humanity fights as one. Focus all firepower on their command vessels. Destroy their coordination. That will collapse the rest. The fleet moved forward in silence. The distance to the enemy closed quickly. Red lights of enemy ships glimmered ominously against the blackness of space, like a storm of fire. Human ships advanced steadily, engines glowing blue as they maintained perfect formation. Far below, on Earth, millions of people watched the live battle feed. Families huddled together, governments coordinated, and scientists studied the enemy movements. Humanity had unleashed its fleets to intercept the threat before it could reach home. The tension was unbearable. On the Resolute, Marcus turned toward his officers. Prepare the stellar breaker arrays, he said. The officer stiffened. The stellar breaker was humanity's most secret weapon. It had taken decades to build, and it had never been used. Entire planets could be controlled, stars could be manipulated, and the energy unleashed could destroy fleets before they reached critical systems. Yes, Admiral, the weapons officer said. Activate shields to maximum. Launch defensive drones to protect the arrays. The enemy cannot breach this line, Marcus continued. Outside the fleet, the first skirmishes began. Human cruisers intercepted small wings of enemy ships. Fighters swarmed across the void, tearing through drones and assault craft. Explosions lit the darkness as beams of energy struck enemy vessels with precision. Direct hits confirmed, the sensor officer reported. Enemy formation is slowing. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Good. Focus fire on the lead command ship of each wing. We hit them first, and the rest will follow. The fleets moved like one giant organism. Human battleships fired synchronized volleys, missiles struck from multiple angles, and fighter squadrons danced around the enemy formations. Enemy ships exploded in waves, but the main fleet continued advancing. Admiral, a young officer said nervously, The enemy is sending kamikaze units toward civilian colonies. Marcus clenched his fists. Deploy the defense drones immediately. Protect every inhabited world. Humanity does not abandon its own. Moments later, thousands of drones deployed from human carriers. They intercepted enemy units mid-flight, destroying them before they could reach any planet. Across the void, energy flashes lit the darkness as the defense systems worked perfectly. Marcus turned toward the weapons officer.
Now.
Fire the stellar breaker arrays. The arrays activated simultaneously. A brilliant white light shot out from deep space, directed toward the enemy's largest fleets. Energy surged across the void, bending gravity and pulling enemy ships into destructive beams. Entire formations collapsed in moments. The enemy could not escape. On the observation screens back on Earth, people watched in awe. Entire fleets were obliterated before they could even reach the inner systems. Humanity had turned the tide. The enemy fleet attempted to retreat, but the human formation was relentless. Missiles, energy beams, and tactical strikes ensured no ship could escape. One by one, enemy vessels were destroyed, drifting as lifeless metal through the void. On the Resolute, Marcus looked out at the battlefield. The enemy was falling, and the solar system remained safe. His voice was calm but firm. This is humanity's promise. No world under our protection will fall while we still breathe. We fight, we survive, and we win. The stellar breaker arrays powered down, leaving a quiet void. The last enemy ships had either been destroyed or scattered. Human fleets remained intact, ready to defend the galaxy if another threat emerged. For the first time in decades, humanity had faced the enemy directly and survived. The solar system was safe. Civilizations across the galaxy were breathing again. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The enemy had been relentless, and more forces might be coming from deeper space. Humanity had won this battle, but the war for the galaxy was far from over. And humanity had shown, without a doubt, that it would never back down. The battle in the Outer Rim had ended, but the enemy was far from defeated. Deep in the darkness beyond known space, massive fleets still advanced. The galaxy had barely recovered from the previous skirmish, yet intelligence reports confirmed that the main invasion force was regrouping. Millions of ships were still heading toward inhabited systems. Inside the command bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Reed studied the data carefully. Blue lights marked human ships, spread across the void in perfect formation. Red clusters moved steadily toward the inner systems. A young officer approached. Admiral, sensors indicate the enemy is preparing for a massive concentrated strike. They are targeting the solar system directly. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we give them what they did not expect. A hush fell across the bridge as he gestured toward a hidden panel. The ultimate weapon was being prepared. For decades, humanity had built it in secrecy, an enormous device buried within the orbit of Neptune. Its energy output could manipulate gravity, generate destructive beams that could pierce entire fleets, and neutralize enemy ships before they even fired a shot. Only humans knew of its existence. Status of the ultimate weapon? Marcus asked. All systems online, the weapons officer replied. It's ready for deployment, Admiral. Marcus took a deep breath. This is the moment we prepared for decades to face. Activate it. Fire at the main fleet when it comes within range. The officers nodded, their hands flying across consoles. Outside the observation windows, the human fleets adjusted course toward the enemy, moving as a single, unstoppable force. Fighters launched, cruisers accelerated, and battleships hummed with energy as weapons aligned for maximum effect. Enemy ships have broken into 3 primary attack formations, the tactical officer reported. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Focus fire on the lead formation first. The ultimate weapon will hit the central command cluster. When it fires, nothing can survive. Hours passed as the fleets approached one another. The enemy did not know humanity's secret. They believed they had survived the scout fleet's destruction and the previous battles. They believed they could still conquer the inner systems. But they underestimated humans. At last, The lead enemy formation was within range. Marcus pressed the activation sequence on the ultimate weapon. Across the solar system, hidden deep within the orbit of Neptune, massive energy conduits lit up. The device powered on, drawing energy from multiple planetary stations and satellites, channeling it into one concentrated beam. On the Resolute, the crew watched the holographic map. Red clusters of enemy ships moved closer, but then everything changed. A white-hot beam shot across space, stretching from the outer rim to the enemy fleet. It struck the central command ship directly. The explosion was instantaneous. The command vessel shattered, sending fragments in all directions. Nearby enemy ships were thrown off course, colliding with one another. Their formations collapsed as panic spread through the fleet. "Direct hit confirmed," the weapons officer said. "Enemy command ship destroyed. Formation breaking apart." Marcus nodded calmly. "Good. Now the fleet follows up. Engage all remaining targets." Across the battlefield, human ships fired relentlessly. Missiles streaked through space like comets, beams of energy tore through enemy ranks, and fighter squadrons intercepted escape pods and smaller vessels. The enemy had no chance to reorganize. The ultimate weapon had shattered their command structure. Meanwhile, back on Earth, billions watched live feeds of the battle. Entire fleets were being destroyed with surgical precision. The galaxy finally realized the full power of humanity. "Admiral," said the tactical officer, "enemy remnants are trying to retreat." Marcus shook his head. "No retreat. Finish them. Humanity does not allow the enemy to regroup." Human forces moved in perfect coordination. Heavy battleships fired wide beams of energy to sweep enemy ships from the void. Cruisers and fighters pushed smaller groups into traps. Missiles destroyed any escape routes. The enemy fleet, once million strong, was reduced to fragments. On the Resolute, Marcus watched calmly as the last enemy ships were eliminated. Reports confirmed nearly total destruction. Human casualties were minimal compared to the enemy's losses. The ultimate weapon had worked flawlessly. Marcus turned to his officers. "Humanity warned the galaxy. Diplomacy failed. We were forced to show our strength. The enemy is defeated today." Outside, the fleet moved into formation once again, ready for any remaining threats. Far across the galaxy, civilizations cheered. Humanity had not only defended its own home, they had become the shield of countless worlds. Marcus gazed out of the observation window at the stars beyond. He knew more battles would come. The enemy had been relentless, and some forces might still exist in the deepest darkness. But one thing was certain: humanity had unleashed its full power. The galaxy now knew the true strength of Earth, and humanity would never back down. The battle was over. For the first time in decades, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. Across countless star systems, civilizations emerged from hiding, sending out cautious signals to confirm that they were still alive. Planets that had trembled under the approach of the enemy now sparkled with life once again. Humanity had saved them all. Inside the command bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Reed stood quietly, gazing at the holographic map of the galaxy. Blue lights marked human fleets, holding positions across the outer rim, while red markers, the remnants of the enemy, had been reduced to nothing. The fleet had performed flawlessly. The ultimate weapon had shattered the enemy's command, and human forces had finished the destruction with precision and minimal loss. The tactical officer spoke first. "Admiral, sensors confirm complete destruction of the main enemy fleets. No remaining clusters detected within known space." Marcus nodded slowly. "Good. Begin recovery operations. Track any scattered units, but we can consider this threat neutralized." Around the bridge, crew members allowed themselves quiet smiles. After decades of preparation, years of warnings ignored, and countless simulations, humanity had finally proven its strength. They had not only defended the solar system, but had become the shield for the entire galaxy. Back on Earth, billions watched the final report streaming in. Cities erupted in celebration. Governments sent messages of thanks and recognition. Humanity's secret, decades-long work had now been revealed, and the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were a force to be respected, feared, and in many ways, relied upon. Across the Galactic Council Station, representatives gathered in emergency session. The chamber that had once dismissed humanity as inexperienced was now filled with awe and humility. Council leader Aaron rose to speak, his usual calm voice tinged with reverence. Today, humanity has changed everything. For 42 years, we ignored warnings. Today, we see the consequences of underestimating Earth. Their fleets, their strategy, their courage, everything we assumed about them was wrong. They have saved countless lives and countless civilizations. And for that, we owe them more than apologies. Other representatives nodded solemnly. One council member whispered, "They didn't just win the battle, they won the respect of the galaxy." Meanwhile, humanity's fleets moved in organized patterns, sweeping debris, rescuing survivors, and restoring order to systems that had been abandoned or under siege. Fighter squadrons patrolled quiet star lanes, and supply vessels delivered critical aid to the Outer Rim colonies. On the Resolute, Marcus Reed addressed his officers. This war was long predicted, and it came faster than most expected. We fought decisively, and we survived. But let this victory remind us of something important. Power is only meaningful when it is used to protect, not to destroy indiscriminately. Humanity has shown the galaxy what we can do. Now, we must show what we stand for. One of the senior officers, a veteran of decades of preparation, spoke up. "Admiral, what comes next? Will other civilizations trust us now?" Marcus's expression was calm but firm. "They will, but trust is earned over time. Our fleets remain vigilant, our systems remain secure, and our alliances will be strengthened. The galaxy has learned that humanity is not a race to be underestimated. Now it is time to build lasting peace." Across the solar system, human ships began returning to orbit around Earth, their formations stretching across millions of kilometers. Pilots and crews celebrated quietly within their ships, proud of their success, but aware that vigilance was always required. On Earth itself, leaders from all nations convened, sending messages of unity. Humanity had not only survived, it had emerged as the guardian of the galaxy. Technology, strategy, and courage that had been hidden for decades were now a shared symbol of hope. Marcus Reed walked to the observation window of the Resolute, looking at the bright blue planet below. He thought of the generations of humans who had trained, built, and warned. They had prepared for this moment quietly, while the galaxy ignored them. Now, the galaxy had seen the truth. A young officer beside him asked softly, "Admiral, will they attack again?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Perhaps. But now the galaxy knows what humanity is capable of. The next time, if it comes, we will be ready. Always ready. And we will not fight alone. Other civilizations now understand the value of working together." Far beyond the solar system, the stars shone peacefully. The remnants of the enemy fleet drifted, powerless. The once looming shadow over the galaxy had vanished. Humanity had changed everything. And as the human fleets returned home, the galaxy saw a new dawn. A dawn where humanity was no longer underestimated. A dawn where Earth was a beacon of strength, courage, and unity. A dawn where the galaxy finally understood that diplomacy had failed once, but vigilance, preparation, and decisive action could save countless worlds. Marcus Reed stood in silence for a moment, then spoke quietly to himself. "We warned them. We prepared. And now we protect." The galaxy would never forget this day. Humanity had shown its true power, and it had done so not for conquest, but for the survival of all. A new era had begun.